Who's Freddie Benson?
From
Hey, everybody, thank you
iCarly.
so much for tuning into episode 9 of the Fourth String Sports Podcast. My name is Brady here. With my co-hosts, I got Skylar and I have Mitch. Episode 9 we're dropping today is going to be primarily focused on the Cincinnati Bengals, the worst team in NFL last year. Are they going to go worst to first? The answer is no. But we're going to break them down today. We're also going to talk just very briefly about the NBA proposal to return. We got some more details on it. The Board of Governors is going to vote on it tomorrow, which would be Thursday. So hopefully in the next episode we drop, which is going to be about Cleveland, we will record that on Saturday, probably drop that on Saturday as well. We should have some updates as to what the the NBA season is going to look like. But we should also cover the MLB a little bit in that episode. We're going to have another one of our buddies, TJ, on the episode, so shout out to Mr. Foffel. Who is going to be joining us on that one.
And then go on a date.
And then going on a date, yeah. Mitch, it was supposed to be a secret. I don't know where he's taking me yet. Just because I know he watches these. So with that being said, I do appreciate everybody who, has liked and subscribed and commented the previous videos. Slow and steady. This has been a DIY project since day one. So we do appreciate everybody. Find us at Fourth String Sports there on YouTube. We're also Fourth String Sports on Facebook and Twitter as well. We'll post links to the show, to the shows as they come out. If you got any questions, comments, anything like that, please email us at fourthstringsp@gmail.com. We're covering Cincinnati today, so Bengals fans, let us know what your thoughts are. We're going to cover Cleveland next. So Browns fans, keep your opinions to yourself because, frankly, do they really matter? It's like, cool, you got OBJ. Can't wait for you guys to go 8-8 next season. Like, awesome. But yeah, let's hop right into it. So the NBA proposal on some updates. Last episode, we talked about a possible round-robin tournament. We talked about a possible World Cup-looking tournament. We talked about a lot of different possibilities. But the one that Adam Silver put out is basically stating 22 teams are going to go to Orlando. 9 from the East, 13 from the West. They're gonna every team is gonna play their next 8 games on their schedule, unless a team that they were meant to play didn't make the cut, such as like the Hawks. So if a team was supposed to play the Magic, and then they were supposed to play the Hawks, and that's brain fart. If they were supposed to play the Magic and then the Hawks and then the Celtics. With the 8-game schedule, they would just go Magic to Celtics. So it just kind of streamlines it that way. And then if there's a tied record, there would be a round-robin tournament for that 8th seed and then eventually going into the playoffs. Now, to get this approved, the NBA needs 23 of the 30 Board of Governor votes, which is interesting because they're only going to say 22 teams are going to make it. So they're going to ask for 22 teams, but they need 23 votes. So I guess the question, you guys, is this a realistic proposal? And is this a proposal you guys like?
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of a compromise from everything that we've been hearing. I think we're putting the best teams in instead of trying to, put like the Warriors or like the Cavs and giving them a shot at like making the playoffs. So I think this is a good idea. And then I definitely think that they can get the 23 team vote. I think an organization like the Golden State Warriors, who have won a lot of championships recently, would take the bullet for this season for the few games that they would have played. And then I think they would be fine, and they just want to, get the season back on track, and then they'll move on to next season because, let's face it, I think they were already thinking about next season when this season began, just because of all the injuries that happened and the departures. So I definitely think that it's possible that we'll be seeing this.
That is interesting that you bring that up, Skyga, before we get to your point, because if the season ends today for a team like the Warriors, they automatically get the highest chance for the NBA lottery. But if you play those 8 extra games, you run the risk of maybe allowing a team like Cleveland to get that higher chance. Now, obviously, that doesn't always mean anything. I mean, look what happened with the Knicks last year in the draft. But that is interesting. Skyga, what do you kind of think about this NBA proposal?
I was just laughing at Knicks fans' misery. It's just something as a Boston fan, I live off of. But I think it's again, like what Mitch said, a good compromise. just looking at it, I personally like the World Cup style. I like some of the other things, but then again, it kind of didn't take into consideration how unbalanced the conferences are because the Western Conference was a lot closer than the Eastern Conference was, and so them being like, okay, no, there's going to be 13 teams from the West competing for that last spot, or like 5 teams from the West competing for that last spot. I think is realistic because that's how close it was in the season. And I think that you think of teams like I know there was rumors that the NBA was trying to get Zion in, but like Zion and the Pelicans were doing really well and on a run there for that before all of this started. So giving them an opportunity to maybe make the playoffs, it's good. I like it. I think NBA fans will like it. I think that the TV contracts will like it. It's just kind of a wait and see because we don't know what something like this is going to look like.
Yeah, it is definitely interesting. Just to do some clarifying things, the Eastern Conference would bring in 9 teams. Based off the seeding right now, it would be Bucks, Raptors, Celtics, Heat, Pacers, 76ers, Brooklyn Nets, and then the Magic and the Wizards would fight for that 8th seed. In the West, they're going to be bringing in 13 teams.
Yeah.
It's going to go Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Jazz, Thunder at the 5 seed. When we get to the NBA, we'll talk about the NBA, but I've loved what the Thunder have done considering they weren't supposed to be good this year. Thunder, Rockets, Mavericks, the Grizzlies at the 8, and then the Trailblazers, the Pelicans, the Kings, the Spurs, and the Suns are all going to show up and battle out for that final seed there. Definitely interesting. If you look at seeding right now, if you play 8 games, let's take a team like the Bucks, right? 53-12, arguably the best team in the NBA. They could feasibly, if they lose all 8 games and the Raptors win all 8 games, drop to the 2 seed by playing these extra games. Now, they can't drop further than the 2 seed, but they could drop to the 2 seed. Teams like the Lakers could drop as low as the 3 seed. A team like the Nuggets, who is the 3 seed, could drop as low as the 8th seed if stuff doesn't work out super well. So I like that they are taking that into consideration, and they're going to come back and say, hey, we're going to play – everybody's going to play 8 games. Like, everyone's going to play these games because it could drastically change the seeding approach, and it could mean the difference between a team getting that, 1 seed and a team getting that 3 seed or, even vice versa. I mean, you look in the East, the 6th seed through the 4th seed are all within 2 games of each other. Yeah. So it changes from the Heat hosting the Pacers to maybe the Sixers hosting the Pacers. And in the West, I mean, seeds 3 through 7 are within 4 games of each other, which is just ridiculous. Yeah. So I like it. I like this. I don't know if they're going to get the 23 votes. I don't know how NBA owners are going to, are they going to are they going to toe the party line here and get the votes just to get basketball back? What's the thought process here,
I think that being NFL fans, we're kind of used to NFL owners being very selfish. When it comes to things like this. Yeah. But NBA from my interaction, from watching the NBA and looking at how their owners interact with their fans and how they interact with the community as a whole, they seem to be a lot less selfish. They seem to be able to work for the betterment of the league because Michael Jordan helped the NBA take off, but this is the most popular the NBA has ever been. And they want that to continue because then that means more money for them. So I think I agree with Mitch. I think the Golden State Warriors will take the bullet because this year they weren't good, but next year they'll be dominant again. So
yeah, Mitch, you got any thoughts on it? I know you were talking beforehand about some things that you heard on the Pat McAfee show in regards to the NBA season returning.
Oh yeah, for sure. So Pat McAfee was saying that everybody was going to get reseeded based on how everything pans out, and they're going to throw in some incentives for trying to get a top seed. So some of the things that they were talking about were if you're a top seed, you could like designate like how many fouls a certain player could get. Maybe getting like an extra coaches challenge. Maybe like bringing in your home floor to play games on to get that like home court kind of advantage kind of thing. And then the fourth one is the most interesting, and I think might pass, is like if you're a top seed, you would get first dibs on whatever like hotel resort in Disney World. Those are the things they're considering.
I kind of like it because like you lose the possibility of home court advantage, and it's not just like the 1 seed loses it. It's like every like 1 through 4 all lose home court advantage, in that first series. So I kind of like some of the proposals. I think the one that would pass would be like you get to choose the resort. I don't know if it's fair to give a team a blatant advantage in giving them an extra coach's challenge or an extra timeout or whatever that might be. I would prefer it just be like, hey, the Bucks get to bring their home court down to Orlando and they play on the Bucks court, or you get to choose, you're staying at Safari Land and the Nets are staying at, Wild West Junction or whatever Disney resorts are. I haven't been to Disneyland since I was like 6.
Robin Lopez wants the Bucks to be in the Polynesian.
So is that a thing? I don't know.
I guess that's the best.
Yes, it is a thing.
Is that I don't know. I literally haven't been to Disneyland since I was like in 1st grade. So
do you need a hug?
I do actually, yeah. Although I was the coolest kid in 1st grade when I went. My mom got me out of school early, so
see, Brady, I was with you there, and I can definitely tell you weren't the coolest kid in 1st grade.
Bro, I was the coolest kid in 1st grade. I was the coolest kid in 3rd grade too when I got to go to DC, and I was the coolest kid in 5th grade just because I was cool. So
and then it went all downhill from there.
And then, I really capped at age 10, and it's all just been the next 62 years are just gonna be shit. The prime of my life was 5th grade when I was like.
I can agree with that. I can agree with that.
3'6", and I sounded like this all the time. Hey, Mitch, do you want to come over to my house and play football?
Yeah, that's your normal voice. I don't know what you're trying to do.
I don't hear a difference.
I'll just do the rest of the show like this.
Dude, we'll lose viewers if you do that.
Worth it. Mitch, do you remember in high school when I kept saying I kept going like psh, psh, at the end of each sentence, like freshman year? And and then I wrote that on papers, and then it became a thing at South, and no one believed me that I started that, and it was a thing for 2 weeks.
I do remember that fade.
God, freshman year, man, twisting.
Yeah, we kidnapped somebody.
Yeah, there you go.
We did actually.
That's great.
I didn't kidnap anybody.
I feel like
remember we kidnapped. Remember we kidnapped Alex from his class.
We had teacher permission to do that, Mitch.
We do. But I'm just saying we still kidnapped him.
I don't think it's kidnapping if you hand the teacher a note that says we're taking this kid. Well, I guess maybe that is kidnapping.
Yeah, but we did pick him up and carry him to...
Did we make the note out of, cut up magazine parts? And, did we cut off his earlobe and, send it to his mom? She'd be like, we have him.
It's okay, audience. I, too, feel left out.
Hey, inside stories are the best kind.
Let's keep talking about high school, so Skylar can't say anything. Remember that one time at band camp?
God, when I was in the 3rd grade, I thought it was gay. But anyway, back to the Bengals.
Well, Bengals fans are going to hate you.
Oh, shocker, I care about the people of Cincinnati. You put spaghetti on your chili. You put chili on spaghetti, Cincinnati. You don't have any right to judge me.
That sounds delicious, okay? I'm going to try it out.
Wait, legit spaghetti or just the noodles?
The noodles. The noodles with chili on top.
I've done that.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, I've seen it both ways. I've seen it, with marinara sauce. And that, to me, is just too much.
That's getting too far.
That's disgusting. No, chili with spaghetti noodles. I'm down.
But also, how poor do you have to be to put chili on spaghetti noodles? To think that's, gourmet. I mean, granted, this is the state of cheese fries, but, Like, we just got so lazy, we just fried.
You have cheese curds. What's the difference?
Yeah, Nebraska has deserts.
No,
He
we
doesn't
don't.
get that joke. The audience
No, we
doesn't get that
don't.
joke.
Hey,
Mitch, that is such a deep cut joke. Like, that's so inside that, like, the whole audience is like, what? Nebraska has deserts?
No, we don't.
They're like, oh no, the bottom one he's got doy brain. All right, let's get back on track. It's a good thing this has been recording. So, to get back on track here, moving on to the Cincinnati Bengals, because I think we've pretty much wrapped up the NBA. Episode 9 here, we're taking care of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, we're going through each NFL team in alphabetical order. We got the Bengals. Previously, we talked about the Bears. Next week, we got the Browns. So Cincinnati went 2-14 last year. Started the year out 0-11. Ended up winning 2 of their 5 games. Interesting thing about the Cincinnati Bengals, they lost 7 games by 7 points or less last season. So it wasn't necessarily a situation where they were like the 0-16 Lions or where they were a 2-14 team who just didn't find a way to compete. There were games they got blown out, but 7 games by 7 points or less is really interesting. So we've been posing this question each time before we get into their stats and everything, based off where the Bengals are at heading into the offseason, even before their offseason started. Where do you have this team at? At a rebuild, in need of a reload, in limbo, playoff contender, or Super Bowl contender?
I think they're a reload. I like their defense. Obviously, they're going to need to make some tweaks there, especially at the linebacking core. I think that's their biggest weakness on defense. Otherwise, I like the players they have there. And then offense, they've got to upgrade that god-awful line. It's going to get – I don't care who you put back there, but they're going to get killed if they play behind that line. And then obviously they have some playmakers in, Joe Mixon, A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd.
Mm-hmm.
And the wide receiver from Clemson they just drafted.
T. Higgins.
Yeah, T. Higgins. So they definitely got some weapons for Joe Burrow. I think that they just need to add a few things, and they'll be better than what we've seen the past few years.
Yeah, I think going into the offseason, they were in limbo for me. It was like – because Zach Taylor was like – unless you're a Nebraska fan, you have no idea who this guy is. So, like, trying to figure out what he was going to do in an offseason after, like, basically imploding. I had no idea what to think of the Bengals going into this offseason. So it was just kind of it was just kind of a wait and see, honestly, for them.
So wait, what is Zach Taylor's connection to Nebraska?
He played quarterback for Nebraska 2004 to 2007 or 2006. Oh no, he was actually like the only good quarterback during the Bill Callahan year. We went to the Cotton Bowl with him.
Did you win?
Say that again?
Did you win?
No.
Oh, that sucks.
Which is indicative of the Bill Callahan era.
Yeah. I actually had no idea Zach Taylor went to Nebraska. So that's actually interesting. I knew Zach Taylor as being the quarterback coach of the Los Angeles Rams, and then kind of pseudo-offensive coordinator. I was very interested in him. He wasn't the guy I had toward the top of my list heading into last season when Cincinnati hired him. I really thought, based off of the players they had and who they were bringing to the table, I thought Cincinnati was going to make a run at Mike McCarthy, and they really didn't. When they hired Zach Taylor, and then the whole story kind of throughout like this last offseason for Cincinnati was who on God's green earth is going to want to be the defensive coordinator for the Bengals. I mean, it almost seemed like the only guy they could hire was like some dude that they pulled off the side of the street. Now, they ended up picking up a guy. I don't know who it is. I don't know his name. He wasn't that good last season, whoever their defense coordinator was. But I like the way the Bengals are moving. Obviously, I put them as in a rebuild. 2-14 isn't indicative of like a playoff caliber team who just had a bad season, What I loved was they lost 7 games within 7 points, and they were competitive, is what I really liked. And similar to the Miami Dolphins, when we get to them, I think that if you watch the game film, you can see steady improvement week in and week out. To go to Mitch's point, that god-awful offensive line, which is still bad, but they were out without their number 11 pick, who they picked, Jonah Williams, at offensive tackle, and he was out the whole season due to a shoulder injury, really similar to, a lot of other teams. So that offensive line should have, at least on paper, been better. Now, there's obviously a lot of things they still need to address, but I do like the weapons they have. I feel like they upgraded themselves, in a lot of different ways. So the Bengals are an interesting team with what they have to bring to the table next season. So heading into just some stats with them, we're only going to really cover players who are still on the team. So Andy Dalton, sorry. Joe Mixon last year, who I believe Bill Belichick called the best back in the NFL when the Patriots played him. Mixon finished with 1,137 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 4.1 yards per carry on the ground. He also added an additional 287 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. Tyler Boyd had 90 catches, 1,046 yards, and 5 touchdowns. The new projected starting tight end, C.J. Uzomah, had 27 catches, 242 yards, 2 touchdowns. Carlos Dunlap and Sam Hubbard last year were the team's leading kind of defensive line players. They had 17 and a half sacks between them and about 139 total tackles. Again, first-round pick, Jonah Williams was out due to a shoulder injury the whole season. They didn't really lose a whole ton of guys in free agency. The 2 big losses were Tyler Eifert and Clayton Fajedalime, or what, I don't fucking know how to pronounce his name. But those were pretty much the only big losses that they suffered in free agency.
Well, they did lose some corner depth in Dre Kirkpatrick and Darquez Denard as well.
True, they did, and we'll get to that, but I feel like they really kind of beefed up, frankly.
No, I think that they were like last year with the Bears, or last week with the Bears, how we were talking about like how their previous offseason, they just focused on kickers and hadn't really solved any of their problems. I think that's the Bengals did what the Bears should have done. They got rid of older players that were taking up cap space, and just kind of, but were able to keep a lot of their like actually good talent. Like the fact that they were able to franchise tag AJ Green and he signed it, and he's staying. That's impressive. So, and they needed him. Joe Burrow needs him for this next season. So.
Yeah, and the reports that Joe Burrow was adamant in speaking with the Bengals, saying they had to keep AJ Green around, was also very interesting. It looks like as of right now, Cincinnati, based off those cap moves that they made, Cincinnati may walk into next season with $76 million in cap space, which is huge. I mean, we saw what Miami did with a huge amount of cap space. They signed half of the New England roster. And then a few guys from, like Dallas and some other teams. I can only imagine what Cincinnati could do with that type of money, especially some of the players who are going to be available. Moving on to their pickups, I'm glad you brought that up, Skylar, because we haven't really talked about that with many teams, projected cap space and stuff. But Cincinnati really put themselves on a top tier there.
Oh, yeah.
Moving into their pickups, they focused primarily on defense. They had a few on offense. But the big ones were Trey Waynes, the Kenosha native, where I'm living right now, the corner from Minnesota. He had 58 tackles, 2 interceptions last year. They also picked up Mackenzie Alexander, another corner from the Vikings, who had 38 tackles and an interception. They picked up Von Bell, the safety from New Orleans, had 89 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and an interception. And DJ Reader, the defensive tackle from Houston, 52 tackles, 2.5 sacks last year. I agree with you, Mitch, that their linebacker core needs help, but they added serious depth on the defensive line and in the secondary here, and like proven depth that can get the job done.
Yeah, most definitely. I think DJ Reader and Geno Atkins in the middle is going to be so huge for their defense. They're just going to be able to collapse the pocket, and then you're going to have guys like Carlos Dunlap and Chris Hubbard. Yeah, Sam Hubbard. Just come off the edge. And then I love the pairing of Von Bell in the backfield. I think he's going to be an upgrade at that other safety spot. And then another move that was kind of interesting is them picking up Josh Bynes. He's been a journeyman linebacker. And I think that, he can be a solid starter for them. If not, he'll be a high level kind of a backup.
Sure. Skylar, what about you? What was interesting in kind of their free agency moves?
Well, I mean, you guys kind of nailed all of the moves that they made that I thought were interesting. I do think that it's when you pair it with their draft class, how you're looking, how they on their defense, they did a really good job of balancing new incoming talent with veteran experience.
Mm-hmm.
Where it makes me interested to see what this defense can do next year. Because they like you guys said, they weren't bad last year. There were definitely times where like the Cincinnati offense was stalling because of that horrible offensive line, and their defense picked up some of the slack. And I think that adding Von Bell, adding Trey Wayans, DJ Reader, like those guys, they're going to make an immediate impact on that team, whether it's on the field or off the field. They're going to help the team in some way.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about a lot of those guys is that with Waynes and with Bell and with Reader, all of those guys are this is their second contract now with a new team, and
yeah,
those can kind of be feast or famine with a lot of players. Like it could be, yeah, this guy was a really good role player on the Vikings or on the Texans, but now that he's going to be expected to pick up the slack a little bit, is he going to produce? And you can kind of see that and understand that with some of these guys. Von Bell was a part of a pretty good Saints defense. DJ Reader had the bonus of playing the majority of his career up until last season with both J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney and a solid defensive line helping him. So did he benefit from that, or was he talented enough to make his own plays? And same with like Trey Wayans and Mackenzie Alexander. Those guys benefited from having really solid help in a really solid defense in Minnesota. So is it that they're really good players on their own, or were they part of a really good team, right? And like the way that I kind of contributed to is like Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas and Richard Sherman were all really good players, right? But Brandon Browner wasn't. And you saw that like when Brandon Browner went to other teams. Like he was obviously benefiting from the rest of the Legion of Boom. Yeah. Now, none of the teams that we mentioned defenses are anywhere near the Legion of Boom, but to kind of get my point across, you understand.
Browner did win a ring with New England.
Yeah, he did. Well, and I think something.
Yeah, but Jimmy Garoppolo also won too. So
I think something smart though from the Cincinnati team is that like while like these players that they added, like while they were they weren't the flashiest of players. They weren't like outspoken, cocky people that were trash talking all the time. These were guys that I think like you're seeing that they're beginning to build this culture of like they nose to the ground. I'm gonna do my job, and I think that helps them in some of these situations where it's like if I was like I think of like when you're like Brandon Browner, like after he went to New England, like he could back up the trash talk that he had because he was on New England, but then when he went to other teams, like Brady said, he really didn't do anything because he didn't have a solid defense around him. Where it's like these guys know that to be have a solid defense, it takes like working. It actually takes like grit and grind, and like that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
You look like you're confused, Brady.
Isn't Brandon Browner in jail?
He might be.
Yeah, sent to prison for attempted murder.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I was like, wait. It's like, okay, I'm sorry, Brandon Browner, for everything we said. You were the best player of the Legion of Boom. Just please don't attempt to murder me. I did really like their free agency moves, and the reason that I really enjoyed them was that if you look at their division, all three teams they have to play, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Cleveland, are all going to be teams who are going to be super run heavy in 2020. Yeah. With Cleveland adapting the Kevin Stefanski offense, we know it's going to be very Nick Chubb centric. It's going to be they're going to want to run the ball a lot and then open it up over play action. We already know what the Baltimore offense is going to look like. We know that Pittsburgh's going to air it out a little bit more, but their bread and butter is still those inside plays to James Conner and to, Snell and stuff like that. And now you talk about adding, just like Mitch said, a defensive line of Geno Atkins, DJ Reader, and then you got Dunlap and Hubbard on the edges. And then you take a team like Baltimore, who when we covered, we talked about they didn't really address the losing Marshall Yanda. This puts Cincinnati in good standing in their division. Do I think they're going to win all 6 games in the division? Do I think they're going to win more than 3? No, not for the next couple of years. But it puts them on the right track, It puts them in the right mindset to compete in their own division, which is, as I've said from the beginning, for any team, you have to win your division in order to be a successful team. You're not going to make the playoffs if you're 2-4 or 3-3 in division,
Yeah, they definitely put themselves in a good position to finally, I think for the first time, really compete within their division. I know they've been to the playoffs a couple times, but they didn't win. And I feel like they're making the right moves to be in playoff contention. And when they can finally get to that point where they make the playoffs, they might actually win a few games.
Yeah, that's the hope with Cincinnati. They've had heartbreak. Andy Dalton was the only quarterback in NFL history to lead his team to both an 8-0 start to a season as well as an 0-8 start to the season. So definitely been feast or famine for the Bengals. Moving on to their draft, the Bengals walked into the draft with 7 picks in total, 1 in each round. Number 1 overall pick, they drafted Joe Burrow, quarterback out of LSU. I don't think we need to talk about it. Everybody agrees he's the best quarterback to ever play? Cool? All right, cool. Got it.
No.
Thanks. So moving on. Oh, do we have a dissenter? Mitch?
I am a dissenter. I've told you that I'm a dissenter.
So Mitch, I guess we'll just ask. Here, let's get a third opinion on here since we don't know Skylar's opinion. Skylar, the Joe Burrow pick, how do you rate it?
I think it was a good pick. I honestly think that you're taking into consideration the other quarterbacks that were deemed first-round worthy.
Yep.
You take into consideration what he was able to do at LSU. Even when he wasn't throwing for 40 touchdowns in a season, he was still an effective game manager. He wasn't turning the ball over a lot. He still led LSU to more wins than people thought that they deserved.
And who'd they beat? Was it the Fiesta Bowl they beat UCF?
UCF. They beat UCF, an undefeated UCF team that hadn't lost a game in almost 2 years. So, I can understand some of the criticism that comes around with Joe Burrow. He only had a really, really great 1 year, but it just happened to be the greatest season a college quarterback has ever played. I think that I think he's a humble dude, and I think he knows that to be able to succeed at Cincinnati, it's going to take hard work. I don't think he's going to be doing a Baker Mayfield where he's going to go in here with all this swag and just kind of expect to win. He knows that in order to win, it's going to take some time. That's why I like him. He's the only person that's ever been compared to Tom Brady where I was like, I can see it.
Okay, so I agree with you 150%, Skylar. So now Mitch, just because he likes to play devil's advocate.
Oh, my opinions? Okay. First off, the dude didn't even start at Ohio State. He couldn't beat out JT Barrett, and what has JT Barrett done since Ohio State? He couldn't beat out Dwayne Haskins, and he didn't have the best rookie year. And then he gets to LSU, and he basically has the same exact team, same coaches for the most part as the year that they just had, and look how they performed. And then once Joe Brady gets there, he makes Joe Burrow into a god, and then both Burrow and Brady leave for the NFL. So I think I'm more upset with the hype around him more than the actual person, I think, and player. I just don't like the hype that's associated with him.
And I can understand that. I think people kind of forget, though, in that 1 year he had before Joe Brady got there, they were ranked 3rd at one point in the country. When they went to go play Alabama, they were ranked 3rd. So it's not like like they were a horrible team before Joe Brady got there. It's just Joe Brady was kind of like, okay, here's what you could do. Like that's my like I understand that like the hype, especially when with college sports, it's like I equate it to Zion Williams, where it's like, yes, the guy's really good, but we can stop talking about him for like 5 minutes. I get that.
No, I mean I agree. Like Mitch, I understand your point. I've always understood your point. I just think it's a stupid point. Kisses.
Shocker.
It's not how you make friends, Brady.
He's been my friend for 10 years. He know how I be. Mitch, let me ask you a question here. So he lost to JT Barrett, but he was a freshman that year, right? So he was a freshman quarterback heading into Ohio State to play against JT Barrett. JT Barrett, like Braxton Miller before him, who'd been around forever, who'd led comeback victories on the road, who'd been a part of Ohio State forever.
If it wasn't for an ankle injury, probably would have won the Heisman.
Agreed. 110%, right? Now, he gets beat out by Dwayne Haskins. Now, in the articles leading to it, a large part of the reason that Joe Burrow lost to Dwayne Haskins in that offseason wasn't really because of any play style. It was because Dwayne Haskins had come in the year before and had beat Michigan in the final game of the season. That in the offseason, they were neck and neck. Mitch, let me ask you a question. In the season that Dwayne Haskins beat Joe Burrow, how many touchdowns did Dwayne Haskins throw for?
Didn't he throw like 40?
50.
50. Okay.
50. He threw 50 touchdowns. So this was a guy who was neck and neck with Dwayne Haskins. All right? Dwayne Haskins goes on to throw 50 touchdowns, was a Heisman candidate through the majority of the season. Joe Burrow, because he needs immediate eligibility, ends up going to LSU, doesn't have a full offseason to play with, doesn't have the opportunity there that Dwayne Haskins had, goes to LSU, still leads them to a BCS bowl game that they win against a team that had at that point won, I think, like 25 straight games or something like that in UCF. And then the next season, he follows it up with, again, the greatest season we've ever seen from a quarterback. And it's not like teams don't like quarterbacks who have one good season. Like we talked about Trubisky. We talked about Kyler Murray. We're going to talk about Baker Mayfield. It's not like we haven't seen this before. I love the Joe Burrow pick. He's an Ohio kid. Love it. I think it's huge for Cincinnati. He's also like a southeastern Ohio kid, which is where like the area
like
Cincinnati
specifically
is.
From that area.
Yeah. B, I think if anything, he just brings stability. Like a huge thing with the Bengals last season was halfway through the season, they decide that they don't want Andy Dalton to start, and they have another quarterback start. And I don't even remember what his name is.
Ryan Finley.
There you go, Ryan Finley. And it got him absolutely nowhere. And then they put Dalton back in, and they end up winning a couple of games. And a couple literally only meaning 2. It brings a little bit of stability. It brings a little bit – I think if anything, it brings hope. Like it brings hope to an organization that hasn't had it in a really long time. It brings hope to a fan base. Like I don't know if you guys followed it, but there was that Cincinnati fan who said he was going to live on the roof until the Bengals won a game, and then he stayed up there till week 12.
Yeah, I followed that.
Like they had to have Thanksgiving on the roof because the Bengals couldn't win a football game. So like,
and then didn't they win like the next week?
I think they did or something like that. They ended up beating the Jets or something. I love the Joe Burrow pick, and we'll debate it for a long time. Do I think he's going to be the next Tom Brady? No, not as long as he's in Cincinnati, because I think as an organization they don't know what to do. But I think he could be a solid starter for a long time. I think he's going to struggle. Peyton Manning broke the record for most interceptions in a season by a rookie. His rookie season, he threw more interceptions than touchdowns. Brett Favre had several seasons where he threw more interceptions than touchdowns. Being a game manager, to Skylar's point, is a pretty good job to get. Like Tom Brady's been a game manager for 17 years and he's won 6 rings on it. So like you can be a game manager, and sometimes being a great quarterback doesn't always win you rings. Like Pat Mahomes won his 1. Rodgers won a ring. But like
Brett Favre won 2.
No, Favre only won 1 ring. He lost to the Broncos in his second go.
Shit, yeah, he did. Sorry.
Sometimes not being the game manager means that you don't get the opportunities that the game manager does. I love the pick. Moving on to their second pick.
Hold up. I still have a point.
Oh, you still have a point. Sorry.
Yeah. I think my biggest issue with the Joe Burrow pick is that I was on the board and they decided not to pick me, even though I led my team to 4 undefeated seasons and won 4 straight national championships at Wisconsin on NCAA 14. And I just don't understand why that was overlooked in the drafting process.
You know what I hated about NCAA 14? I hated when I'd have a halfback who won like the Doak Walker Award for 3 straight years, and then he'd get to the draft and they'd be like, "Oh, he's a 3rd-round pick," and you're like, "Bro."
Like what actually happened to Jonathan Taylor?
honestly, well, it's like I had a wide receiver who like won the Heisman 2 years in a row, and they're like, 6th-round pick. I'm like, what? What? It's like at least Randy Moss was a 1st-round pick. Like, come on. But moving on, their second pick, and I'm sorry, Mitch, that your feelings got hurt, and maybe one day the Bengals will realize the guy that they lost. He's even wearing an orange headband to mourn the fact that he by the Bengals. Or is that a hope that the Browns will still call you? But
Yeah, still get the Browns.
Yeah, right. But their second pick, this is the pick that I loved, and I loved the T. Higgins pick, the wide receiver from Clemson. I think he's a great wide receiver. I think he brings even more depth to a wide receiver room that we already talked about between A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd. I think he'll get the opportunity to learn from A.J. Green, as well as it. I always love it when a team drafts a quarterback and then drafts a skill position player in the same one. The one that I kind of attributed to, now obviously it's not the same situation because they didn't go to the same school, but when the Colts drafted Andrew Luck and then a couple rounds later they drafted Coby Fleener. Obviously Coby Fleener, the tight end from Stanford, didn't turn into the player he wanted, but familiarity breeds like comfortability when it comes to football. And the understanding that both Joe Burrow and T. Higgins are going to walk in with huge expectations, I think really helps both of them out because they can rely on each other. So, like, I love the T. Higgins pick, first pick in the second round.
So I have a question to that point of, like, drafting your quarterback and then bringing in a skill positions player. So do you think if Arizona didn't make the trade for DeAndre Hopkins, they would have went with CeeDee Lamb at their pick?
Yes. I don't think it would have been CeeDee Lamb, but it would have been another wide receiver.
I don't think they would have. I think they were already happy with what they had in the wide receiver room. I think what they realized was that they could get a hell of a deal out of Houston. I think Arizona knew where their weakness was, and that was the fact that defensively they couldn't keep up with the tight ends in the league. And that when you have to play George Kittle twice a year and you have to play a really good running game in San Francisco and a really athletic quarterback in Seattle, that you need that linebacker. So I think they probably still would have gone with Jonathan Simmons, especially because they did draft Andy Isabella, the speedster out of UMass, the same season they drafted Kyler Murray. So I don't think they would have gone with CeeDee Lamb over Jonathan Simmons.
Oh, yeah. I keep reading they got Simmons there. Never mind. I take back what I said.
Especially because I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mitch, but the thing that always sticks in my head with Jonathan Simmons is his point where he says you get 53 guys on a roster, and when you draft me, you end up getting 56. I love that. I love that cockiness. I think that he makes a great point because he can play all over the field. CeeDee Lamb is a great player.
Oh, Isaiah Simmons?
Isaiah Simmons. I'm sorry, Isaiah Simmons.
I was like, who the hell is Jonathan Simmons?
My bad. I don't know why. I've always done that. I've always called him Jonathan for some reason, but Isaiah Simmons. When he said that point, I loved that. I was adamant that I thought the Giants were going to take him, and then they didn't, and then Arizona ended up getting him, and I think that was a huge steal for the Cardinals, which we talked about in our Cardinals episode. So go back and listen to the Cardinals episode. But that was a good point, Mitch.
Yeah, and then I do like this T. Higgins pick. I thought he was the second best wide receiver at Clemson, and I think that he has all the potential in the world to be DeAndre Hopkins' number 2. Or sorry, I was thinking about the Cardinals. But I think he has the potential to be the number 2 guy in Cincinnati And then once A.J. Green either retires or he leaves, I think he could bypass Tyler Boyd for that number one position.
I think that if anything, this kind of ends up being an incentive for AJ Green because if T. Higgins can ball out, we've already seen Boyd can go for 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns in a season. You know Green is going to get his numbers if he's healthy. If T. Higgins can put up, let's say Higgins puts up 700 yards and 5 touchdowns next year. If I'm AJ Green and I know I got those two guys playing with me, that opens up a lot of opportunities for him, and I think it gives him an incentive to stay in Cincinnati.
Yeah, but the biggest question, I think, like you said, is it's going to come down to his health because he hasn't been healthy lately.
Yeah, it was bad. Then their third-round pick, they drafted Logan Wilson, linebacker out of Wyoming. Hit or miss for me on some of these later-round picks they had. I did like that in both this round and then in their fourth round, they drafted Akeem Davis-Gaither, linebacker from App State. I do like that they addressed their linebacker concern, and unlike the Bears with their offensive line, they didn't wait till the seventh round to do it. They did it in the earlier rounds, like in the early third-day rounds,
Yeah. And I like that they picked specific linebackers that they needed to compete in their division. Because, I mean, the thing that made the Bengals season even more worse was watching what Baltimore could do to them. Lamar Jackson. God, why can't I think of his name? Could do to him. That spin move, I mean, was on his highlight reel for the entire year, where the linebackers for Cincinnati just kind of fell. And so they picked up young, fast coverage style linebackers that you need in order to be able to take on Lamar Jackson, to take on the fact that like this is a run heavy division, but they also love to use their running backs in the pass game too. And you need somebody that can go up against them. They love their tight ends. You need coverage linebackers in order to do well. They're inexperienced, but it's what they needed.
Yeah, I think these are two solid guys. For me, they're either going to be great linebackers or they're just going to be busts. But if anything, they're just going to add good depth to that linebacking core, which I think they'll take that or, a good starter.
Yeah, it does kind of remind me of like what almost kind of what like Green Bay's approach is, where Green Bay's approach is like our pass rush was so good last year that we just need our linebackers to cover the tight end or the halfback long enough that we can let our pass rush get there, And I think the Bengals' approach to that is really similar. Like they're going to get a lot of depth and a lot of athletic guys at linebacker position because they're understanding that their defensive line should be good enough to get to the quarterback and harass them pretty consistently. And with the help they picked up in the secondary, hopefully take away a couple of reads. So, I mean, I like it. I like that they address the linebacker position. Linebacker is another position for me, the same as like wide receiver or corner, where I never think you can have enough depth there. It just with how often guys get hurt and how often guys get replaced or go to chase big money. Blake Martinez, whatever. But moving on to the fifth round, they drafted Khalid Kareem, defensive end out of Notre Dame. In the sixth, they took Hakeem Adeniji, offensive tackle out of Kansas. And in the seventh, they took Marcus Bailey, linebacker out of Purdue. So they ended up taking 3 linebackers, addressed the skill position players, addressed the offensive line, and then also got a pass rusher. I guess, how would you guys grade the draft overall for Cincinnati?
I think I would give them a C.
Fuck off, Mitch. A C?
What?
A C? Come on.
Dude,
I think Green Bay got
only...
an A++ on the draft, and Chicago got an F.
Okay, no, Mitch, explain why they deserve a C, please. I want to hear this.
I'm going to mute this shit. I'm calling this. The show's over. All right, a C. Jesus.
Okay, so T. Higgins is the only player that I actually love. And like I said, Logan Wilson, Akeem Davis-Gaither, and Marcus Bailey, they're either going to be good or they're just going to be depth guys. So, that kind of brings it down. Hakeem Adeniji from Kansas, I don't know what to make of him. I don't know if he's going to be that good of a starter. And then, my feelings about Joe Burrow, I don't think he's going to light the league on fire. He might just be an Alex Smith kind of guy. And then, yeah, so that's why it's a C.
That's successful. Alex Smith is successful enough. Multiple.
Three straight NFC championship appearances, right? Like 3, at least 2.
Is that what we're playing in the NFL now for? NFC championship appearances?
It seems to be the only thing Green Bay plays for.
That was more than what the Packers were able to get in that time span. So,
well, I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was 3 straight because remember Kaepernick took his job halfway through the season.
That's true.
But I mean, success in Kansas City when he went there, and honestly, success in Washington before J.J. Watt decided to go all like
Lawrence Taylor
Mortal Kombat on his leg.
He LT'd him.
He did, like literally. And he was
if Joe Burrow ends up more Alex Smith than he does Carson Palmer, that's a win for Cincinnati.
Yeah, nobody likes Carson Palmer. It's okay.
Mitch, I hate you. Skylar, what do you grade their draft?
A- B+ for me, okay?
Oh my god.
No, okay, Joe Burrow was the best quarterback, had the least health concerns in the entire draft class. Okay?
Hands down.
He was hands down. I love Tua, but Tua, his injury history is too concerning for me to ever consider drafting him 1 overall. Okay? T. Higgins is going, not only does he bolster the wide receiver core, he's going to be learning under one of the best wide receivers in the country, if not the best wide receiver in the country. He's not, but he's one of.
He was at one point, I'd say.
He was at one point. He's not anymore. And I agree with Brady, going to then light a fire under A.G. Green's ass to be like, yeah, I'm worth this money. Their linebacking core, yes, while it's inexperienced, I'm not as pessimistic on these guys as you are. I think that they're actually going to be doing really well. They're going to get solid playing time because who else do they have at linebacker? It's going to be trial by fire. I agree that they could then burn out, but they follow this culture that Zach Taylor is building around Cincinnati, where it's not you're not talking shit. It's nose to the ground, get stuff done. I think that in 5 years' time, we're gonna look back at this draft class and be like, this was a win for Cincinnati. This was a total win for Cincinnati, and this started their change.
I tend to agree with you, Skylar, and the thing that I agree with you on mostly is that culture with Zach Taylor, because make no mistake, Cincinnati is not in a win now scenario right now.
Oh, God.
Cincinnati could feasibly afford to let A.J. Green walk after next season. I think a huge part of it is that they want to have that really experienced wide receiver to go in conjunction with their really inexperienced quarterback. I don't expect Joe Burrow to throw more than 20 touchdowns and probably 15 interceptions next year. He's not going to have a great rookie season. Nobody really has. Aaron Rodgers had a terrible first season the year he started. It wasn't great. Tom Brady was a game manager for the first couple seasons of his career. Peyton Manning, like we said, Skylar. Peyton Manning, like we said, threw more interceptions than any rookie quarterback had in his whole life, right? Starting quarterbacks their first year are not going to be good. There's no expectation that he's going to be MVP next year, or even rookie of the year, probably.
Oh, there's expectation that he's going to be rookie of the year.
No, I don't think.
From the stuff that I've been hearing, everyone's saying that this is the best place he could have got. He's got AJ Green, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon. He's going to be offensive rookie of the year.
I could see it. I can see him doing it, but it just depends on what version of Joe Burrow we get. That's it.
Dude, it doesn't matter what version of Joe Burrow you're going to get. He's going to get sacked 60 times a game.
See, and I disagree because they're going to get Jonah Williams back.
Look back at that SEC championship game where he had Georgia defensive linemen all over him. These are guys that are drafted and successful in the NFL, escaped them, still threw it 30 yards downfield, and got it in the red zone, okay? No, this isn't just he had probably the best offensive line in the SEC. That one dude, literally ragdolled several players. I looked back at that Vanderbilt game, and it's just hilarious to watch.
It's so funny the way he throws that guy around.
Okay, but Joe Burrow, again, this isn't it's not that he's just all talent. He's incredibly intelligent as a quarterback. Like I understand the hype can be a little exhausting, but it's there for a reason. Like he's a good quarterback.
What I loved about Joe Burrow is and Joe Burrow would even say it, is that his first season at LSU was not a great season. It was okay. No. But what Joe Burrow did, everybody says Joe Brady just was brought in and then immediately Joe Burrow throws for 60 touchdowns. And that's not the case. That's not the case at all. Joe Burrow, and you can see it in the way that he plays, is that he went into that offseason and he went, okay, what can I improve? I can improve my mobility. I can improve my ability to read defense. I can improve my touch on passes. I can improve my throwing on the run. Everything he could improve, he did. Like he can't always improve his arm strength, so he didn't necessarily worry about it. But he could improve his touch on throws. Like he couldn't necessarily improve his 40 time a whole lot, but he could improve his mobility in the pocket. And that was the biggest change. You look at Joe Burrow first season at LSU versus Joe Burrow's second season at LSU, his mobility, his ability to create plays outside of the pocket was astronomical and led to a huge part of that success for LSU.
It's the reason they beat Bama. It's the reason they beat Bama.
It's the reason they beat Bama. It's the reason they beat Clemson too. Let's not walk over that. And the reason they crushed Oklahoma and the reason that they crushed Georgia as well. His mobility was a huge portion of that. What I love about Joe Burrow is his work ethic, is that this was a kid from piss poor Ohio who was Mr. Ohio in football, got barely beat out at Ohio State, went to LSU, lost got beat up over the season, beat UCF. Nobody talked about LSU coming into the season, and then completely lights up the college football world. And a large part of that was because of his offseason ethic. And if his work ethic matches in 2020 what it did going into 2019 at LSU, the Bengals have a successful quarterback. I grade the Bengals at about a B to a B+, really similar to Skylar.
And there's no question that Joe Burrow is the leader that Cincinnati needs right now. Because here's the thing, when you have a young coach who's unexperienced, there's going to be some doubt there, especially after the season they had last year. But Joe Burrow, he loves a challenge. You can just see it from how he plays. I am usually not this high on Joe Burrow. I think it's just I'm trying to be a foil to Mitch right now. But you look at him and he is a leader. And he's not, and it's almost the exact opposite of a Baker Mayfield. He is just a quiet, you know what? No, we're gonna go kick their ass. That's what he, and then he does it. He doesn't talk. He just does it.
And I love that. I've never been high on SEC quarterbacks. I don't think they pan out as well as some other divisions. I think that if Joe Burrow has the understanding walking in that the understanding shouldn't be the Bengals are going to win the playoffs. The understanding shouldn't be the Bengals are going to win more than 8 games. The ceiling I've seen on Cincinnati was 8 games next year that they win. The understanding shouldn't be that he's going to win Rookie of the Year. The understanding should be he needs to develop his craft over the next couple of seasons. When the understanding comes about that teams like Cleveland and like Baltimore are going to start to run into cap issues, when the understanding is that in a couple seasons Ben Roethlisberger is not going to be in Pittsburgh, when in a couple seasons a lot of these other AFC teams are going to be struggling at the quarterback position, that he can pole vault himself into upper tier AFC. Overall, I give him a B to a B+. It could go as low as a B- in regards to how well those linebackers play. I think they addressed the concerns. I think walking into next season with $76 million in cap space is going to be huge, because $76 million in cap space, you could sign a whole new offensive line if you want. It's going to be there for you to address. Wide receivers are going to be there. They do have solid skill position players all around. A little bit of an issue at a tight end position. I wish they would have addressed tight end a little bit more in this draft or in this offseason. You lose Tyler Eifert, who is never super healthy, and you're going to replace him with a guy who hasn't proven to be that level in CJ Uzomah. So we can go back and forth on this for hours, and I'm sure that we will over the next couple of years. But we have to move on to schedule predictions. Now, we've talked about the Cincinnati Bengals twice so far this season when we covered the Baltimore Ravens episodes. Both me and Mitch had them losing both times to the Ravens. So we will be sitting out those picks in what would be Week 15 and Week 17. Go back and listen to our Ravens episode. But to start out the season, the Cincinnati Bengals will host the Los Angeles Chargers. Mitch, win or loss?
This is going to be a loss. I think the Chargers upgraded their offensive line. I think the only real hole on there is left tackle. So hopefully they can. I'm talking about the offensive line, kid. Hold on. So there's that. I like their wide receivers. They have some solid running backs. I think Chargers have an underrated defense. I think they're going to play better with some of the additions that they've got. And Tyrod Taylor or Justin Herbert is going to be good enough to beat the Bengals.
Sky Guy?
I disagree. I think the Bengals are going to go in week 1, and nobody's going to expect them to win, and they're going to. Whether it's game manager Joe Burrow or it's throw for 60 touchdowns Joe Burrow, I think that people are underestimating the Bengals this year, and that is going to be a lot of teams' downfalls. So I have them winning.
I am actually going to agree with Skylar on this game, and here's the reason. Both teams walk in with huge question marks, and they walk in with the biggest question mark at the quarterback position. And while I really like Tyrod Taylor, and I absolutely hate Justin Herbert, and we'll get to that when we talk about the Chargers, to me, still haven't fully addressed the offensive line issue. I think Austin Eckler is a really good player. We don't know, are we going to get a healthy Hunter Henry at tight end? They have Keenan Allen and then not a whole lot of other depth at the wide receiver position. I agree that defensively they're pretty solid all around, but there's still a few questions. I don't think it's going to be a great game for Joe Burrow. I think he's probably going to throw 2 interceptions, but I think it's going to be like a 20-17 game where the Chargers end up getting overmatched just slightly. Now, I have the Chargers as a whole doing better than Cincinnati, but when it came down to it, I thought that if Cincinnati's going to walk in with a healthy offensive line with Jonah Williams there, with some of the other guys that they have on that team, in addition to Joe Mixon, where there's question marks at the Chargers linebacker core, there's question marks in the Chargers secondary. We still don't know the extent of Derwin James' injury. How well is he going to be coming back from last season? That kind of stuff. I think that it bodes slightly better for the Bengals, so I actually have them winning that game. Week 2, they go to Cleveland to play the Browns. I have them losing that game. I think the Browns.
Thank God.
But that's the only game they're going to lose this season. Cincinnati's going 15-1. The Super Bowl's coming to Sin City, baby. I may change all my picks just to piss Mitch off really bad. But I have them losing the game. I think the Browns' offense is going to be just enough to overwhelm them. I think defensively the Browns have improved with some solid signings. Again, still questionable at the linebacker position, losing Christian Kirksey and Joe Schobert. But I think the Browns will do enough. I think it'll be a good game for Cleveland, and I think they end up beating the Bengals there.
Bengals are going to lose again. I don't think they have the corners to match up with Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry.
They just signed him, Mitch. Trey Wayans and Mackenzie.
Yeah. Train Wayans. Train Wayans is going to cover Odell.
Wayans?
Trey Wayans is going to cover Odell Beckham Jr. Oh, my God.
Didn't seem to stop any. It didn't really, doesn't matter who covered Odell Beckham last season. Cleveland didn't really do super well. But I'm going to agree with you that Cleveland's going to win. You're going to make me fight you over a computer. Dick. Skylar.
Mitch is going to hate me. I have Cincinnati winning here.
I hate you for that pick as well. Okay. Why?
Why? I think I do think Cleveland's going to have a much better season, and I think they're much improved. I think the beginning year of the season, it's going to be a little rocky for them just because it's them getting used to another new system, them having
in a shortened off season.
I think that some of the animosity from last season is still going to be lingering, especially at the wide receiver position, because both Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry have horrible egos. And so I think that's either Odell Beckham Jr. is going to have the best season we've ever seen as a wide receiver, or he's going to not do so well again because he's throwing a bitchy fit.
Yeah.
So I mean, easily Cleveland can win this game, but I don't think they're going to.
Sure. All right, well, week 3 at Philadelphia, I have the Eagles winning that game. I talk about the Eagles all the time having a tendency to play down to competition. I think this may be the case in that one, but I think the Eagles with a healthy Carson Wentz are just an overwhelming team for Cincinnati, so I give it to the Eagles.
I agree with you. Eagles are going to beat the Bengals. I don't think their offensive line can match the Eagles' defensive line. They're just going to get overmatched and overpowered.
Eagles win. I mean, the Eagles are the better team, and they're better coached as of right now, and their defenses can at times be scarily good.
Yeah, and especially with upgrades in the secondary that they made in the offseason. Week 4, they host the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mitch, I actually already know your pick on this because we talked about Jacksonville a little bit, but I have them beating the Jaguars. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see two teams who had a bad season last year, and one on an incline and one on a decline. And I think that this is going to be the game. This could be the moment where Joe Burrow could ball out and could play really well. But this could also be the big red flag. Like if he doesn't play well against Jacksonville, knowing that team has virtually nothing, that could be a huge red flag. But I have Cincinnati beating Jacksonville.
Yep, I have the Bengals getting their first win here. I think that Jacksonville's going to have the number 1 overall pick next year. So nothing more to say.
Yeah, I also have Cincinnati winning. I think that, again, just the weapons they have on offense and the fact that Jacksonville has lost like all of their good defensive players just compounds to the fact that they will have the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, agreed. Week 5, we already covered this matchup. They go to Baltimore to play the Ravens. I think while Cincinnati has improved, I think the Ravens end up winning that game.
Yeah, I think the Ravens are going to win this game. I think they are, they have the advantage at pretty much every position against the Bengals.
Except for quarterback. Skyler?
Oh, my. I'm leaving. I'm out.
Mitch, you can't rage quit a podcast. All right, well, if you're out, if you're really done, then I'm going to have it down that you have Cincinnati winning every game the rest of the season.
He's coming back.
I don't think.
Well, I don't think that Lamar Jackson's gonna make him look as ridiculous. He's still gonna make them look ridiculous. Baltimore wins.
All right.
I was gonna fuck with Mitch there, but after that,
you're right. At this point, it's just funny. Week 6, they go to Indianapolis to play the Colts. So it is interesting. The first 6 weeks, 4 games on the road. They play the Colts. I've been high on the Colts. We had a little bit of debate on them last episode. I think the Colts win this game. I think the Colts stack up really well. I think the Colts have a better offensive line. I think with DeForest Buckner, they have a better defensive line. I think their secondary is still pretty strong. I think it's going to be a closer game than maybe comfort, but I have the Colts winning that game.
I'm going to surprise some people. I'm going to say that the Bengals are going to beat the Colts.
That's it. I quit. I'm done.
I think that that the Bengals actually have some advantages in some areas. I think that their defensive line can match up really well against the Colts' offensive line. And then a huge point for me of why I have to take the Bengals over the Colts is that I don't trust Phillip Rivers. I think we're going to see more of the guy that we saw last season, and I really just don't trust him. And whatever Cincinnati puts at quarterback, I think will play better than what Phillip Rivers is going to put out on the field.
See, I agree with Mitch here too. I think that Cincinnati goes in and wins. I think another thing is that while I agree that the Indianapolis defense is more improved, just like last week, if I'm gonna pick between the Indianapolis defense and the Cincinnati offense, I'm picking the Cincinnati offense. Because the skill positions, I honestly think that their skill positions and adding Joe Burrow makes them one of the better, just offensive threats in the league if they can get the ball off before he gets sacked. But I honestly think that Cincinnati can go in here and win because they're going to put up more points. Not Philadelphia. Philip Rivers is a shell of what he used to be. As much as he's a good guy, I don't think he's a good quarterback anymore.
We'll get to it when we get to Indianapolis. We have very dissenting opinions on the Colts. I'd just like to point out that Quentin Nelson is the only player in NFL history to be named All-Pro in both of his first 2 seasons. So you guys can both suck up.
Oh, I'm not knocking their offensive line. It's their
Mitch.
quarterback. Their quarterback is trash.
But okay, so this is the only point I'm going to make. How long has Philip Rivers been trash? Because the Chargers, as an organization, refused to address the offensive line. Kept guys like Russell Okung, who we talked about when we talked about the Panthers, right? Like,
yeah, we talked about them.
Kept them on the payroll. They refused to draft tackles. They refused to address anything on the offensive line. So, yeah, Philip Rivers is older, right? But Peyton Manning was also older. Philip Rivers isn't Peyton Manning. I'm not making that comparison. But if we're going to talk about just a quarterback for being old, then we're just going to talk about a quarterback for being old. Like, he's going to have an improved offensive line. He's going to have, I would argue, maybe a more steady defense than they've had. Darius Leonard, and now you're adding DeForest Buckner. He's going to get whatever. He's going to play in a weaker division, whatever. We'll get to it, whatever. Week 7, they host the Cleveland Browns. Since the schedule came out, and I think we talked about it when we broke down the schedule, I had this as a trap game for Cleveland. I have the Bengals winning that game. I think that it's in Cincinnati, where Cleveland historically doesn't play super well. I have the Bengals winning it. I think it's going to be it's the only division game I have them winning, but I think it's a step in the right direction. I have Cincinnati winning that game.
Yeah, I have Cincinnati winning this game. The Browns and the Bengals are the bottom two teams of this division, and I don't think either one of them, either team is going to sweep each other. So I think this is going to be a tied series.
Don't look now, you guys. Mitch has the Bengals winning 3 out of 4 games. The Lombardi's coming to Cincinnati.
See, as much as I am high on the Cincinnati Bengals, I don't think Cleveland loses 2 games in the season.
Skyler, you can't get my hopes up like this. Whatever. All right.
Originally I did have Cincinnati winning this game, but going back through my my season and looking through it all, I think by then the problems that I said at the beginning that Cleveland was going to have in week 2, they won't have here. I think by then Kevin Stefanski will have the offense kind of figured out. The defense I love for Cleveland, so I think that they'll be fine there. It was the offense and my big problems, and hopefully the ego issues would be solved by then. I don't know. It could go either way. I have Cincinnati losing this game.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. I don't like either of you anyway. So, week 8, they host the Tennessee Titans. This was a game I had going back and forth because I can't wrap my head around the Titans. When we get to them, we'll get to them. But I had one schedule with Tennessee where I had them going 12-4, and I had another schedule where I had them going 5-11. And like every time I've tried to do it in between, I can't seem to get a straight answer. I have them losing to Tennessee, though it's going to be a lot closer than I think people are going to give them credit for. I think Tennessee's going to do a really good job with that strong offensive line and Derrick Henry in kind of keeping the ball out of the Cincinnati offense's hands. I think with it being his rookie season, this may be a game where Joe Burrow makes a crucial mistake, and it may cost him. So I have Cincinnati losing that game.
Yeah, I have the Titans winning here. I think there's going to be a few deciding factors for them. I think Derrick Henry is going to get his yards. I know that the Bengals have a good defensive line, but if he's able to break through that line, they have an inexperienced linebacking core. So he's going to be able to go far down the field. And then I'll say it again. I think that A.J. Brown isn't going to be covered by Trey Waynes or Mackenzie Alexander or whoever you want to put on him. I think he's going to overpower them, and he's going to get his yards too. So with those two being highly productive, it's going to lead them to a win.
See, I'm actually kind of high on it. I'm kind of high on the Tennessee Titans. I think that they're the ascendant team in the AFC right now. I think that if you look into the future, they'll be quite good actually. Mike Vrabel's doing a great job. This is a trap game for them though. They're coming into Cincinnati. They don't have the toughest beginning of the season. And I think that it can lull them to sleep. I have Cincinnati winning this game because
Wow.
I think Tennessee is going to fall asleep, and I think that it's going to bite them. I don't think that it's going to happen often to Tennessee this season, but one place that it can is against Cincinnati.
Hate the answer, love the rationale. So, so heading into their bye week, they've got a week 9 bye week, so exactly halfway through the season. Mitch, you and I both have Cincinnati at 3-5. Skylar, you have Cincinnati at 5-3. Mitch,
Oh
I
my
think
God.
I think you and I would agree that that 3-5 is probably not good enough to be in considered the playoff race, but according to Skylar, they're a 5-3 football team. So coming out of the bye, they go to Pittsburgh. This was another one kind of similar to Cleveland with me, where I had them going back and forth, but I think Pittsburgh just brings too much to the equation here. I really like the Steelers in this game. I think where the biggest improvement is the Steelers' defense. I think they stack up really well against the Cleveland offense. So I have Pittsburgh winning.
Yeah, I have the Steelers winning. It's at Heinz Field. Even though there's not going to be fans, I still think it's an advantage to play on your home field. I think that the Steelers' defense is going to shut down the Bengals' offense, and they're going to get Big Ben back. And a forgotten point last season was that the Steelers almost made the playoffs with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges as their quarterback. So you get a guy like Big Ben, even though he might not come back as his prime self, if he can just be a solid starter, I think he can take them places.
And to your point, Mitch, they would have made the playoffs had it been the 7th seed organization that we're going to have in this upcoming season.
Yeah, I also have Cincinnati losing this game. I think that as much as I never really understood the hype around Ben Roethlisberger, at least in the later seasons, I think that young Ben Roethlisberger was really good. Old Ben Roethlisberger, not so much. And he doesn't. Pittsburgh didn't really reload. I don't know. Pittsburgh wins this game. As much as I have some questions about them as a team, they win this game because Cincinnati is just TJ Watt is just too good of a linebacker.
Sure.
That's
completely
it.
understandable. Week 11 matchup at Washington. This was one that I had going back and forth. I mean, obviously, the big storyline is we're going to get the 2 Ohio State quarterbacks, Dwayne Haskins and Joe Burrow, going back and forth. Had Washington drafted anybody besides Chase Young, I probably would have said the Bengals would win that game. But with the addition of Chase Young to go next to Ryan Kerrigan, even though I have huge questions in their secondary, I have huge questions on their offensive line. I think this is going to be a sloppy football game all around, but I like what Ron Rivera is doing in Washington, and I have the Redskins winning that game against the Bengals.
Well, Mitch puts his head in his hand for right now. I'll go on the other side, and I think that all of your points are very valid, Brady. I also agree that Ron Rivera is going in the right direction with Washington. I think it's just going to take a little longer. I didn't think as much as Dwayne Haskins was a really good quarterback at Ohio State, I don't think that he was worthy of starting in his first year. I understand that the injury to Alex Smith kind of accelerated that timeline of him starting some games. But from what I watched last year, and I understand that this is a completely different Washington team led by a completely different person, the things that happened last year aren't going to happen this year. I think that it takes some time for Washington to build what they need to be successful. And I think that Cincinnati is going to be just a little bit quicker off the step this season. And that's why I think I have to give it to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think that Joe Burrow is going to prove your point, Brady, and he's going to show that he was the better quarterback, I guess. I think that the Bengals, as a team, are better than what the Redskins have right now. There's really big questions for what Dwayne Haskins can do. I'm not in love with their offensive line. They really only have Brandon Sheriff now that Trent Williams is in San Fran. And their running back position is just a mess, and they really have only one wide receiver. And even though I think that the Redskins have an underrated defense, I don't think it's going to be enough to beat Cincinnati.
And like I said, I mean, this was a game for me that's 50-50. If the Bengals end up winning this game, I have no issue with it. To me, the issue was actually their next game was the Giants, because I had them winning one of these two games. I just couldn't figure out which one it was. And I came to the conclusion that I had more question marks around the Giants than I did around the Redskins. So moving into week 12, they host the New York Giants. I have them winning that game. I have them winning it for a few reasons. We saw Saquon Barkley struggle last season against really good defensive lines, and I think that Cincinnati is going to bring that to the table. The Giants, to me, still have issues on their offensive line. I would argue that Daniel Jones probably had a more inconsistent rookie year than in the small showcase we saw out of Dwayne Haskins. Saquon didn't look 100% coming off of his ankle. So by week 12 of the season, what kind of Saquon are we going to get? And then defensively, the Giants have been a wreck. Yeah, they had some good pickups, but I still don't feel like they have that solid of a pass rush. I still don't feel like the secondary has been improved really at all. And so with that, I think Cincinnati ends up beating the Giants. And what's interesting is, like, a lot of the points that I have against them beating the Giants are the points you guys made against them beating the Redskins. But for me, it was just, who do I have more question marks on? And for me, it was the Giants.
So I have the Bengals beating the Giants. I think the Giants are just a mess right now. Their offense basically is Saquon Barkley 95% of the time. And then 5%, it's the Darius Slayton kid who's kind of broken out and is really their only wide receiver right now. I know that they have Sterling Shepard, but he hasn't really produced since Odell Beckham left.
They have Golden Tate.
Yeah, but Golden Tate's getting up there, and he's like
He's been suspended too.
Yeah, and he's like Emmanuel Sanders kind of level right now. Not what he was with, like, Detroit. And then I agree with you that that defense, even though they did add some names, I don't trust in it. I don't like any position group that they have on defense. And are we really supposed to believe in a defense that one of their main pass rushers is Kyler Fackrell? So, yeah, Bengals are going to
win. For everything you guys have said, why they win is why I have them winning too. I think that it's
the first time we've all agreed they're going to win a game. Oh my God, it's a miracle.
Actually, I think the Giants are going
to.
I think the Giants are actually going to win.
We also had them all beating Jacksonville. I'm sorry, I freaked out. Whatever.
I'm sorry. I think.
Go ahead.
But I think, like, as much as I think that Daniel Jones, and as much as I hate to say this about the Giants quarterback, was underrated going in, and he performed better than I thought he was going to. But I have to agree, if they don't have Saquon, the Giants' offense really isn't anything. I think that going into the future, Saquon and Daniel Jones will be probably one of the best quarterback running back duos, and not best, but at least productive. But Cincinnati has too many weapons on offense, and the Giants have too many questions on defense.
Sure, no, it's completely fair. Week 13 at Miami. This could possibly be the matchup where we see Joe Burrow go up against Tua Tagovailoa, a rematch of the LSU-Alabama game last season. This, for me, was a back-and-forth one as well, because both teams are so bad. Because it's in Miami, I at first I really had Miami winning this game, and then the more that I thought about it, I changed it to Cincinnati. I have Cincinnati winning. I can't really rationalize it. It was just on paper. The more I looked at it, the more I liked Cincinnati a little bit better. I think a lot more weapons on the offensive side. I think that we talk about how bad the Cincinnati offensive line is, but I think Miami has really just as bad of an offensive line. Miami definitely upgraded on defense with with half the Patriots roster that they signed, but still a lot of questions. If we've seen anything, it's that teams who have a really good defense and a really bad offense can't perform when it comes to in clutch. We talked about it last week with the Bears. So I can't necessarily explain my rationale, but I did have Cincinnati beating Miami.
Yeah, I have Cincy beating the Dolphins. I think I've made this
That's
point
3 in a row
times.
for Mitch. 3 wins for the Bengals for Mitch. He's on the train. The Burrow Express is steaming along to the Super Bowl.
They play 3 of the worst teams in straight weeks. It's okay. So I've made this point about the Dolphins several times. I know that they made a bunch of additions to their defense specifically, but until I've seen how that's going to gel on the field and stuff, I've got to look at what they accomplished last year, and I just don't have any confidence in what the Dolphins are going to be able to do. And for me, I don't think Tua's going to play this year. I think it's going to be a redshirt year. I think if the Dolphins organization is smart enough, they'll put him on wraps so he can properly heal that. And even though he might be healthy enough to play, I don't think it's worth the risk. I mean, it isn't worth putting him out there to like end his career where you can just put him on wraps for his rookie season and then he's your decade-long starters. That means that Ryan Fitzpatrick's your starter, and we all know about him. I mean, he'll put up a couple good games and he's like the second coming of Jesus, but then he'll show his true colors and he's like one of the worst quarterbacks. So with all that in combination, the Bengals will win.
Skyler?
Yeah. I agree with both of you. Also, I think
that's 3 in a row for Skyler. The Bengals are going to the Super Bowl.
Okay, but I had them 5-3 at the break. Okay. I do think that
got him at 8-4 right now.
The similarities between Cincinnati and Miami are very, very close. But something to take into consideration, Joe Burrow doesn't have the health issues that Tua does, like Mitch pointed out. And I think they did a better job of shoring up their defense, and they have a slightly better offensive line. Slightly. And it depends on who you ask. In my opinion, slightly. So I think that Cincinnati wins 3 in a row.
Interesting. So heading into the final quarter of the season, we've got 4 weeks left. I have Cincinnati at 5-7. Interestingly, despite all of his hate, Mitch actually has Cincinnati at 6-6, and Skyler has Cincinnati at 8-4 heading into the final 4 weeks of the NFL season. So week 14, I think this is where the magic starts to fall apart. They host the Dallas Cowboys. I think even with the loss of Travis Frederick, the Dallas offensive line is too good. I think Ezekiel Elliott is going to do the same thing against Cincinnati that Tennessee did, that Derrick Henry did, which is he's going to get to that second level. And with the inexperience at linebacker that the Bengals have, I kind of equate it to when Dallas went 13-3 and they came up to Green Bay. And while the defensive line was solid, once Ezekiel Elliott got to that second level, that's when the door was wide open. I think defensively the Cowboys haven't necessarily improved, but I think that they've done enough to stifle Cincinnati, so I have the Cowboys winning that game.
Man, I really hate to say this, but the Cowboys are going to take the Bengals to the woodshed. They just dominate them at every single position. I think that Mike McCarthy is a better coach than Zach Taylor. I think that Dak Prescott or Andy Dalton's going to be better than whoever plays for the Bengals. I like the Cowboys' offensive line. I think Tyler Biadasz is going to play up to his potential and just slide in there for Travis Frederick.
Oh, my God. Between you being a Wisconsin homer and Skyler liking the Patriots, we can't do this show anymore because it's not impartial.
Ezekiel Elliott is just going to be like Derrick Henry, what I said earlier. I think that nobody's going to be able to cover Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb or Michael Gallup. And I think that the Cowboys defense is, I've said it, as long as they gel together, they're like top 10, top 15. And even so, I think they're going to be solid enough to hold off the Bengals offense.
Skyler?
Yep, I think Dallas. I would love for Andy Dalton to start this game because Dak doesn't sign his franchise tag. So Andy Dalton goes into Cincinnati and wins this game because I think he could. I do have Dallas winning because when Dallas is good, they are a top 4 team in the NFC. Like, not a question. When they're good, they're better than a lot of teams in the NFL. So yeah, Dallas wins.
Interesting. Week 15 matchup, they host the Pittsburgh Steelers. I originally had them splitting the series with the Steelers. I decided to change that because I feel like by week 15, Pittsburgh's going to be playing for possibly that final playoff spot for playoff positioning. I think Big Ben plays really well in the state of Ohio, whether it's Cleveland or Cincinnati or where he went to school at Miami of Ohio. And I think Pittsburgh just wins that game. I think, again, Pittsburgh just matches up really well with them on paper, and I think Pittsburgh wins that game.
Yeah, I agree with you. For the same reasons that I think that the Steelers are going to win the first time, they're going to win the second time, and I think this is going to be a sweep of the series.
Same. Pittsburgh wins. They're just they're too consistent on defense for Joe Burrow to beat them.
Week 16 matchup, they go to Houston. I definitely think Houston's going to be bad next season. I don't think they're going to be bad enough to lose that game. I think Deshaun Watson, who's really his coming out party was a game against Cincinnati his rookie season. I think he kind of shows up the Bengals again. I still think Houston has the defense as well as the offense to kind of get into a dogfight with Houston, and I think Deshaun Watson just has that killer instinct. He's never, until that game against Kansas City, I think it was that he'd never lost a game by less than 7 points. So he's never really lost a game. He's never gotten really blown out until that divisional round game against Kansas City. He's a dog fighter. I love it. I have Houston winning that game against Cincinnati.
I hate to do this to you, Brady, but I think the Bengals are going to beat the Texans.
I'm just going to pee my pants in frustration.
I really don't like this Houston team. There are only really 3 players right now in Deshaun Watson, J.J. Watt, who isn't prime J.J. Watt, and then Justin Reed at the safety position, who I really like and I think is their best defensive player. But outside that, there's so many questions. I mean, you've got that offensive line. Yeah, they made some additions, but are they going to be good enough? They decided to put David Johnson as their running back, and he's a guy that I loved when he was in his prime, but where he is now, he's not that guy. And at the wide receiver position, with Hopkins gone, now Will Fuller is your number one, and how's Will Fuller really panned out in Houston? I mean, when he's healthy, and he's good, but he can't stay healthy, so who's your number one guy then? And then the defense, I mean, outside of J.J. Watt, Justin Reed, and then your 2 inside linebackers whose names I can't think of right now, I don't like it.
I know it's like Benardrick, McKinney, and Whitney Merciless. I love Whitney Merciless. Skylar, who you got winning?
I think Joe Burrow writes Bill O'Brien's death warrant here. I think.
Interesting.
I think that this is that he goes in, and beats Houston because for every reason Mitch said, there's just too many questions across the board. And the players that they have who are world-class all-pro players aren't healthy consistently. And I think after this season, after Cincinnati beats this game, Bill O'Brien is fired as the head coach of the Houston Texans.
I haven't gone a long way before this.
Yeah, I kind of haven't gone a long way. I said he should have been gone before they even drafted Deshaun Watson.
No, I think he should have been gone a long time. But if he's not gone by now, he's gone.
Yeah,
if he's still there, he obviously has some blackmail on the owners because I don't know how he's kept his job.
That's understandable. So week 17 matchup, me and Mitch have already talked about it, a game against Baltimore. I have them losing, same reason I have them losing in week 5. I think Baltimore is going to be playing for a little bit more. I did say in that episode that this could be a game where Baltimore may sit their starters. If Baltimore is fighting for really what just comes down to the 1 seed now that the 2 seed would have to play wild card weekend. If Baltimore has already locked that up, I think they sit their starters. Maybe Cincinnati has a chance to win. In reality, I don't think Baltimore will be at that 1 seed. I think they'll be fighting for it, but I don't think they'll be locked in there. So they'll have to play their starters, and I think with that, Cincinnati loses that game.
Yeah, I said it in the Baltimore episode. The Ravens are going to sweep them. They're the class of the AFC North, and they're in the upper echelon of the AFC in general. And even if they do sit Lamar Jackson, I think RG3 is solid enough in that offense to beat out the Bengals.
I really, really considered having Cincinnati win this just because of Baltimore, like you guys said, Baltimore sitting starters. Whether it depends on what they're playing for. If they have the first seed locked up, Cincinnati could win this game. But because I have them fighting for it when it comes to the end of the season, they have to play their starters. Cincinnati loses. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so this is by far the biggest difference that we've ever had. I think our previous biggest was about 2 games. This is also, 2 games, but we're all 2 games apart from each other. I have Cincinnati going 5-11. I have them finishing with 4 straight losses. Mitch, you have Cincinnati going 7-9. They finish with a loss, lose 3 out of the last 4, but they have some good stretches. I think definitely improvement. And Skylar, you have Cincinnati going 9-7. That begs the question: does the Cincinnati Bengals make the playoffs in Skylar's overall playoff bracket?
Let me check. They do. They do make the playoffs.
What's
barely? They're the 7th. They're the 7th seed. I think that. But here's the thing. Going through this, the first time I went through this, they went 6-10. I am just very optimistic. I know that for a lot of the reasons why I said that Cleveland wasn't going to succeed at the beginning of the year, I think is the exact opposite why Cincinnati will. People are not going to be able to prepare for them. People aren't going to be able to go through the motions and be able to handle some of this because Cincinnati's adding so many new things that it could trip people up. And I think that the new players that they're adding, the young players that they're adding, are talented enough, just enough, to make up for some of that lack of experience. And I think that they just need to surprise a couple teams, and then they can make the playoffs. They're not going to go far because they just won't. But I think that Joe Burrow has a successful year. I don't think he's going to throw for 30 touchdowns or even close to 4,000 yards. But I think that we see first-year LSU Joe Burrow this year, where he's just careful with the ball and squeaks out some wins that people probably thought that they shouldn't have won.
I think what is interesting is one of the first points I made with Cincinnati was I said, they lost 7 games last year within 7 points, 8 games within 8 points. They lost a game by 8 points exactly. I think that with some of their pickups, they've definitely added some killer instinct. Like they've added playoff experience. Von Bell having been in the playoffs several years now with the Saints. Both Trey Waynes as well as Mackenzie Alexander having been there with the Vikings. DJ Reader even with the Texans. And really across the board. And I think that experience is going to do huge dividends for them. I have them at 5-11. I don't have it as anything more than another rebuilding season. I think they could get to 9-7, maybe the year after. I still have them as 4th in the AFC North, but I definitely think we're going to see that steady improvement. I mean, a 3-game increase from year 1 to year 2 for any team is huge. It's not a 7-game increase like you have, Skylar, or a 5-game like Mitch has, but I think we see steady improvement out of Cincinnati. I think their issue is that, unfortunately, they just have to play teams like Baltimore and Pittsburgh and Cleveland 2 times a year.
I agree with that. I think just that second half of that schedule just helps them out just a little bit. Having to play those 3 straight games against teams that I believe are inferior.
That middle stretch can really build momentum for a team. At Washington, home against the Giants, at Miami, that can really build positive momentum. It's this Bengals team can either be scary good and defy all expectations, or be exactly what we think they are, and they're going to be 4-12, 5-11, 6-10, and coasting to the last spot in the AFC North. Sure. Mitch, you want to give a rationale behind your 7-9 record, you Joe Burrow hating piece of Wisconsin love?
See, I don't let my biases play into my playoff predictions.
Oh, but Tyler Biotish is just going to go right into the Travis Fredericks role. But I don't have any biases. I don't have any biases at all.
Dude, he was the number 1 ranked center coming into the draft and interior lineman, but he had that injury and he had to get that surgery, and that's why he dropped so much. I think he can be good enough to go into that spot. But anyways, we're talking about the Bengals. So I think Yeah, I know. I just love the chase. Okay, so I think the Bengals are going to get a really huge advantage from the way their schedule is played out. And I know it's not like the most easiest one for it could get them to the playoffs, but I think it's created in such a way that it'll be able to show themselves in the league how far they have come. So, you get those really bad teams like Washington, the Giants, the Dolphins, and then some of those, and the Jags, and then some of those like okay teams that could go either way, like the Colts or the Browns or the Eagles or on so on and so forth. And then you get the big bad boys like the Cowboys, the Ravens, and the Steelers. So I just think that for where Cincinnati is right now and the way their schedule it is, I think it just kind of comes together.
Interesting. So Mitch, where do you have them in the AFC North? Do you have them the 4th, the 3rd?
Let me see. I believe I have them in last place again.
Oh, interesting. So you're going to have the AFC North as a competitive division there, which I definitely think it will be. All right. Well, that's Cincinnati. That was by far our most heated episode. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. We're going to drop this episode. I'm probably going to end up dropping it tomorrow, which would be Thursday the 4th? The 4th. And then we're going to record and probably drop on Saturday the 6th. In that one, we're going to have another guest star, TJ, on here. He's going to talk about MLB. We're going to talk about NBA at that point. We should have an idea as to the return. And we're also going to break down the Cleveland Browns. I think the Browns are going to be another interesting team where I think we could have some serious gaps between everybody's positions predictions. I got the hiccups. Fuck me. So it is going to be very interesting. I appreciate everybody for tuning in and listening. Before I just do a wrap-up, boys, you got anything else you want to say or contribute?
Yeah, I got two things. First off, please send us like questions and stuff. Hit us up on the Twitter DM, slide into those DMs, hit us up on the Facebook page. I know I've posted a couple stuff on our page, but I'll try to put some more like fan engagement stuff, kind of like polls and questions and that kind of stuff. So I'll be able to work that in the coming days. And then second, I have something very controversial to say. I think that Joe Burrow is closer to being Jamarcus Russell than Tom Brady.
I don't know if I'd say Jamarcus Russell. I would say Joe Burrow is closer to being
Brady Quinn.
No.
Yeah.
I would say no. I would say Joe Burrow is closer to being Chad Pennington than he is Tom Brady.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, I can live with that.
I think we could even say he's going to be closer to being Carson Palmer than he is Tom Brady, right? Like that's a good prediction. In that he could find some success, but is he going to be consistent? Like, so I understand what you're saying there, but I don't know. Jamarcus Russell, I mean, the dude was a
biggest flop in the NFL draft history.
No, the biggest flop was Tony Mandarich for the Green Bay Packers because we could have drafted
Barry
Sanders or
Ryan Leaf.
Ryan Leaf. Interesting. Hey, let us know what you think the biggest flop in NFL draft history was. But yeah, Skylar, you got any closing points here?
I know it's not like something that people a lot to pay attention to, but the MLS also met, and they in Major League Soccer they met and decided not to do a lockout, which was very interesting. Apparently, their Players Association and the league were getting into some heated things. I just skimmed the article because it was interesting, but I had other shit to do. And they're apparently restarting their 2020 season. Which is really interesting. We're starting to get back into the time where a lot of leagues are deciding what they're going to be doing for this next upcoming season. So I need to look more into it before I can say anything officially, but it's interesting. And also Bundesliga, just you know what, keep watching that Bundesliga, the German soccer league. It's great. We love it.
Between that and the Korean baseball league, man, people are getting so desperate it hurts. It's like
but there is what's his name? McKenny for one of the teams that's an American, a young American. That
I know there's a few Americans playing over there in Korea right now.
Yeah.
Dude, there's like a
in
New Zealand
Germany,
marble
in
race.
Germany. No, okay, one sec, tangent.
Was this on
rant,
ESPN
okay?
like the Ocho? Is this like...
No, okay, everybody. We're gonna look at a camera right now. Everybody needs to go on YouTube and look up Jelly's Marble Races. Jelle. It's from the Netherlands. I have never gotten so heated over marbles in my life. It is like if you miss sports right now and you want like really competitive, it's got a storyline and everything. You need to check it out.
The marbles have a storyline? What is this?
The marbles have a storyline. It's great. It's got commentary and everything. They've done a Marble Olympics. They've done a Marble Formula One. It's great. It's great. People need to check it out. It's wonderful.
Jesus. You know it's bad when even the Kiwis are.
It's not New Zealand. It's Netherlands.
Oh, it's Netherlands.
Oh, that's even worse.
Oh, it's better.
The Dutch.
But what's his name? John.
To quote Austin
John
Powers,
Oliver.
those damn Dutch.
John Oliver is sponsoring their next Marble League, which is like their Marble Olympics. Because
Yeah, that's how I found out about it.
Yeah,
That's ridiculous.
No, it's wonderful, and you need to watch it, Brady.
I will do no such thing.
You will, and you
I
will
have
be
like
a
4
fan.
brain cells left in my head, and I demand that they not be spent focusing on marble racing.
Yeah, but you're gonna focus on how good the Colts are gonna be in 2020. Okay, sounds good.
Okay, yeah, that'll do. That'll do. You know, when the Colts beat the Bengals in the AFC Championship game, you guys are going to be really upset. But just to do
I hate you on both levels.
just to do a wrap up here, we appreciate everybody listening. This has definitely been our longest episode, or at least it will be. We have so much more content we're going to be bringing you. We have people who are going to be showing up on the shows. Please, like, subscribe. DM us, notify us, let us know what you guys' comments are, questions. Let us know what your predictions are for Cincinnati or any team that we've covered. Any team that we've covered, we'll gladly readdress. You can reach us online here at Fourth String Sports, or you can email us directly. We're at fourthstringsp@gmail.com. We'll gladly read off your stuff on air here if it's an interesting point, or if you just decide that Mitch is wrong and Joe Burrow is the greatest quarterback of all time, we'll gladly read all that stuff as well. So I do.
Or if you want to hit on me, I am single.
Yeah. If you want to hit on him, I'm gonna make a burner account just to hit on you. I'm gonna pull a Kevin Durant. So I do appreciate everybody listening. Everybody have a fantastic night. Please be safe and continue to not watch marble racing. Thanks, guys.